everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Saturday, October the 7th, race number 10 at Keeneland. It's the Grade 1 Coolmore Turf Mile, important prep for the Breeders' Cup Mile. Let's take a look at this field. $1 million is the purse. We've got 9 good turf horses in this race, but they have questions, some of them, Mike. The 5 Up to the Mark is the best turf horse in the country, in my opinion, but we haven't seen him since winning the 1.25 mile Manhattan. He was going to run at Saratoga, but he had some issues. Now he's got to come off a little bit of a layoff. Master of the Seas wowed them in the Woodbine Mile, but this year's Woodbine Mile on paper, he had to win, didn't he?
Yeah, it wasn't a super strong field. I mean, the runner-up of that race is a pretty nice horse, but this horse just sort of dominated that field. Master of the Seas did. That's an advantage for him, if only because that was just 3 weeks ago, and they come right back in this race. And as you've already referenced with Up to the Mark, who is really, really good, he's obviously had some issues since the last time we saw him.
And adding to the question marks is even the likable Millionaire Set Piece, a horse that just won the Arlington Million at 1.25 miles, and he's done well at a mile in the past. But with his running style, he needs a trip and he needs pace, and we'll see if he'll get it. According to Timeform US, the pace projector believes it'll be fair, and they believe that Stitched, who is on the lead in the Mint Million at Kentucky Downs, will get to the front. And I really don't have any arguments with that, Mike. I think he can be forwardly placed. English B, you could put him just about everywhere, anywhere you want. I wonder what they'll do with Atone, because Atone's best races have come, in my opinion, when he goes to the front.
Atone's the key to the pace in this race, in my opinion. It certainly could just play out with Stitch going to the front and Atone sort of looking for a tracking spot. That's certainly possible, but Atone is fast enough to make the lead if they wanted here, Dan. If he was mine, if I were the connection of this horse, I'd try to make the front with him.
The number 1 is Master of the Seas. He has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. He was a useful type in Europe, a multiple Group 2 winner. In this year's Woodbine Mile, he was 2 to 5 and he ran to it. He gets to the outside and he just mops up in the final furlong. 104 Beyer speed figure. A repeat of this effort probably puts him right there or thereabouts.
Absolutely. I mean, he was in good form earlier this year anyway, in Dubai and in England, and they shipped him over for this race. And I realized that, Appleby and Godolphin, they just win everything that they send over to Woodbine on the grass. This horse dominated that field. It wasn't a super strong field, but the figure says it was a good race. It looked like a good race. He won for fun. And the horse that was second to him, that horse is okay.
Here's a European Raider, the number 2 Indestructible, a 3-year-old. He'll be taking on older horses. He's now with high percentage trainer Jorge Delgado. This horse, a Group 3 winner earlier this year, going a mile. He wore cheek pieces in his last 2 starts. He was kind of overmatched against Kinross last time out. That horse is pretty good. Came back to win a Group 2 and then was second in the Prix de la Forêt, a Group 1 going 7.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's been keeping good company, that's for sure. His last 4 starts against some really, really good horses. The problem, Dan, is, at least in my opinion, he just really wasn't competitive in any of those races. He scored off the layoff, a Group 3. The Foxes, the horse that he beat there, did come over. I think he was the favorite in the Belmont Derby, and he wound up finishing second. I don't know. I feel like he's in pretty tough here. 3-year-old taking on some good older horses.
Stitch is going to come into this race in good form. Winner of the Grade 2 Wise Dan to the tune of a $94 mutual 2 starts back. He then ran the Mint Million. They didn't believe. He was 24 to 1 in this race, and he was able to set a pressured pace, and he's able to hold on to finish second behind a European runner in Ancient Rome. He ran just fine in this spot, Mike. It looks like he's in the form of his career, and the tactical speed that he has just really allows him to get these kind of good trips. It's the toughest field he's faced by far on Saturday.
Exactly. That's the thing that you really have to consider, is that he is up significantly in class here. His recent form is good. He was even pretty good last year as a 3-year-old, Dan. They didn't really test him last year, but he ran some good races. Listen, maybe he gets loose on the lead here and he's really tough in this race, but I think he might be in over his head.
7-year-old Set Piece, the number 4, can still step. He won the Arlington this year. He won the Arlington Million last time out at 1.25 miles. He's banked $1.7 million. Going back through his lifetime PPs, he wins at a mile. Just maybe not against this caliber of competition. He was a late running 4th in last year's Coolmore Turf Mile. You just wonder, with his running style, he has no speed, that if he's just left with too much to do, he can't run these horses down. In the Arlington Million, he got a great setup. He was last behind a fast pace and then just destroyed them in the stretch.
Yeah, he was good last time, for sure. Everything went his way there. It was also a really good spot for him, but he was really good winning. And listen, you know what you're going to get with this horse. He shows up every time. He's a really good horse, but he has no speed. He's going to be last when they come into the stretch. He's going to have to pass everybody. So he's going to need a clean trip. He's going to need some pace. And I'll be honest, Dan, assuming that the favorite in this race, I suspect the horse will be the favorite, Up to the Mark, is in good form. I don't even think Set Piece is the best closer in this race.
Up to the Mark ran really well to win at Churchill Downs, going 9, the Turf Classic. He backed that up on Belmont Stakes Day with a win in the Manhattan, going 1.25 miles, and he just powered away from this group. He validated his claim to being the best turf horse in the country at this point. The problem is, it's Belmont Stakes Day. We haven't seen him since then. He has had a setback in training. So now they're going to run him here at 1 mile. And why is he here at 1 mile? Is it because he's kind of a tweener? Is he better at 9 and 10 furlongs in the Breeders' Cup? You know, the lesser of two evils is the Breeders' Cup Mile than the Breeders' Cup Turf at 1.5 miles?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that that's got to be the thinking now, since he's missed all that time. I mean, that was, as you mentioned, Belmont Stakes Day, and that win we just saw, he didn't even get back on the work tab until August 27th. So he missed a lot of time. And I just got to believe that Pletcher and the connections are thinking, well, he's good enough to win a Breeders' Cup race, but I don't think it can be the 1.5 mile turf. It's got to be the mile. We'll point him for that. Assuming all is well with him and he's tight enough, I got to think this is a great spot for him, Dan. I don't think maybe the Godolphin horse on the rail will give him fits in here, but even if this horse isn't 100%, he's better than these horses.
English B is a very likable horse. He doesn't win very often. 2 starts back in the Grade 3 Kelso, where he finished behind Casa Creed, one of the better turf horses in the country, and Annapolis, a horse he'll be facing on Saturday. I just don't think a horse like this could have asked for a better trip. I think that's the best English B can do, that 95 buyer in the Kelso. He had trouble last time out at Kentucky Downs, but I think even with a good trip, this just might be a little too tough.
Yeah, we're going to agree on that. He's a nice horse. He always shows up and runs his race. It's never good enough against stakes horses. The last 2 wins on his card going back over the last few years are in allowance races, Dan. He's just not quite good enough to beat horses like this, but he gets good trips, and he's usually around trying to get a piece of it at the end.
While the 7 Atone did come from off the pace to win the Pegasus World Cup Turf in his seasonal debut, it wasn't the strongest edition of the Pegasus World Cup Turf. The runner-up Ivar more of 1 mile. The other horses still trying to find their way. He hasn't won since. He did get up close to the pace in the Mint Million last time out, and then he was kind of very patiently ridden and then ran on at the end. I would send him and at least get close.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I actually think he ran a lot better than it even looks last time in the million. I'm not sure why they didn't want him on the lead in there, but they didn't, and they just sort of ripped him back. And then he got into some traffic through the stretch and had to alter course, and he was actually still running at the end. I think that's an underrated performance, and maybe it sort of signals that he's getting back into good form. I get what you're saying. The Pegasus World Cup, he got a great trip against a relatively modest field, but he ran that day, Dan. His good race is pretty good.
Harlan Estates the number 8, and I wonder if he's just one of those head-scratching Kentucky Downs horses that just happens to love that surface, because he showed up at 37-1 in the restricted Tappet Stakes with blinkers on, and this was just a different horse than the one we've been seeing at Colonial and Ellis. I know he ran a good third behind Set Piece in the Arlington 4 starts back, but he was no match for that horse. He was a different horse here.
Yeah, and it's not, again, it's not the first time that we've seen this stuff, though, Dan. Horses go to Kentucky Downs, and if they really like that configuration, they just look really good. And then if you take them to a different track right off of that, they don't look like the same horse. We'll see if this horse can replicate this performance. Even if he does, it's probably not going to be good enough, but this is a good effort.
Conversely, the number 9, Annapolis, who made Casa Creed run in both the Kelso and the 4-star Dave, went second. He was a no-show at Kentucky Downs in the Mint Million, a race where it looked like he had a chance, then had a little bit of trouble, and maybe it was already too late and he was 1-paced. I'm expecting getting away from there and getting back to Keeneland. Hey, he's the defending champion in this race. He's got some tactical speed as well. I wonder if he's as good as he was last year, but his 4-star Dave and Kelso were promising enough to make me give him a chance at a price.
I kind of feel like maybe he's not as good this year as he was, but we'll see. Your points are well taken about the Saratoga performances. I was actually pretty disappointed in his 4-star Dave, too, back in Grade 1, because he got a great trip in that race. And listen, man, he just wasn't good enough. And I don't want to knock Casa Creed because he's a really good horse. But this horse, to me, if he was at his best, he would have won that race. And he just wasn't good last time. I know he drew a trouble comment, but he drew a trouble comment because he didn't have enough horse to get through the hole there, and they shut it on him eventually. But if he was good, he would have went right through.
Before we get to our top selections, please click that subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time in here, there are going to be 2 horses to beat. It's the Pletcher Up to the Mark. It's the Woodbine winner down towards the inside, Master of the Seas. You're going with Up to the Mark. You trust Todd off the layoff. It's in a good angle in the past.
Yeah, I really, Dan, in this race, I couldn't get beyond the 2 favorites in here. I get all the reasons to not want Up to the Mark in here, and maybe that'll be the right way to approach this race. Maybe he just needs it. I just think he might be better than these horses. I'm going to take him. I flirted with putting a tone on top in here. I think he's going to run better. I don't think he can beat both of the favorites.
That's the worry I have with Set Piece. If there was one in here, maybe I would be more confident. I'm just taking more of a stab situation with Set Piece. He has to be a decent price, and of course, he needs pace and trip. 5174 for Mike, 4512 for me. It's the Grade 1 Coolmore Turf Mile. Great card at Keeneland on Saturday. Good luck.